The prosecution's star witness, Cassie Ventura, is back on the stand under cross-examination. And moments ago, the judge just weighed in on timing, telling the defense that they have until tomorrow's lunch break to continue questioning her, adding that anything after that would be up to his discretion.
The courtroom became a crucible, day 4 of Cassie Ventura's cross-examination, where every loving word from the past was weaponized, and every denial met with a barrage of her own explicit messages. The question hanging heavy in the air: was she a willing partner in a dark fantasy, or a victim slowly ensnared in a web of alleged manipulation and control? What the jury heard next would only deepen the mystery. The defense launched a relentless onslaught, their strategy crystal clear: paint Cassie as not just a participant, but an eager one. They paraded her own communications, a torrent of texts, BlackBerry messages, and emails stretching back to 2007 and beyond. Jurors saw messages where a young Cassie allegedly declared, "I love you, I'll fly anywhere for you," and playfully asked Diddy, "You hungry, Pop?" The defense even highlighted a message where Cassie reportedly expressed a desire to have his child, writing, "I can't wait until we have a baby of our own," fully aware, it was pointed out, that he already had 6 children. The defense hammered home the point: "You kept coming back to him for 11 years, didn't you?" But these early declarations of apparent love were about to be starkly juxtaposed with her later claims of profound coercion, and her demeanor on the stand under this intense pressure became a spectacle in itself. What happened next, however, shifted the focus from affection to raw, uncomfortable intimacy. Confronting her past words, Cassie was made to read aloud some of her most explicit messages. The courtroom listened as her sexual exchanges with Diddy were laid bare, discussions about upcoming freak-offs, her reported desire to bleep, and details of her setting up their room with candles for these encounters. It was a raw, unfiltered look into a deeply private world. An interesting dynamic reportedly played out. Observers noted her apparent willingness to read these very personal texts when presented by the prosecution. Yet there was a moment, it said, when she asked the defense lawyer, Ana Maria Esteval, to read some of the messages instead. This subtle shift didn't go unnoticed, with commentators wondering how the jury might perceive this change in her willingness to voice her own past. Adding another layer of complexity, Cassie reportedly laughed at one 2007 email she had written, dismissing it with the words, "It's like a journal entry." But beyond the overt sexuality revealed in these messages, a more disturbing pattern of alleged enmeshment and troubling requests began to surface, hinting at something far darker. The concept of freak-offs was reportedly central to their relationship, a point Cassie herself allegedly stated. The jury was shown explicit texts detailing the planning of these encounters, with messages like Diddy asking, "Maybe we can call Jules," and Cassie responding, "Can you do it? Yes."
So, Brianna, we expected this. We know from the opening statement from the defense, a big part of their case is trying to get this jury to believe that Cassie Ventura was a consenting adult in these sexual acts, these freak-offs that we've heard so much about during her direct testimony. So a lot of what the defense has been doing today during this cross-examination is showing text messages and getting Cassie Ventura to acknowledge that, according to these text messages, she was a willing participant in some of these freak-offs. But one of the things that we haven't done or haven't heard yet, Brianna, is the connection between those text messages in the early stages of the relationship and the violence that we heard so much about during the direct testimony yesterday. And I think when the prosecution gets to redirect, we're going to see them try to link the violence that happened later in the relationship to her participation and make the argument still that she was being coerced into these commercial sex acts with escorts, despite how she may have felt about Sean Diddy Combs in the beginning of their relationship.
In another exchange, she reportedly asked Diddy if he had any pills on you, and later admitted on the stand to taking opiates during that period. One particularly telling message, it's claimed, revealed her writing, "I need to feel this is my husband, the only one who will see this side of me," a sentiment expressed even as she harbored fears, she said, that he only saw her for SX. This alleged environment of intense sexual demands and a stark power imbalance chillingly echoes claims made by others who were once in Diddy's orbit. Former Danity Kane member Dee Woods, in a separate interview, described what she termed a verbally abusive work environment under Diddy, where she felt he was constantly treating you like a piece of meat, systematically chipping and knocking away at one's self-worth, creating a predatory space where it was reportedly scary to be by yourself. And this alleged control, as Cassie's testimony suggested, wasn't just confined to sexual matters. It reportedly permeated every facet of their lives, a volatile mix allegedly fueled by jealousy and a dangerous reliance on substances. The defense delved deep into the themes of jealousy and infidelity, probing Cassie about her reported envy of other women in Diddy's life, like Carrie Morgan, Kim Porter, and Gina. Her own alleged affair with musician Kid Cudi was also brought to the forefront. Diddy's reactions to suspected cheating were described by Cassie as scary, involving incessant calls and a climate of fear. She reportedly admitted that Diddy had kicked her in the back after discovering her involvement with Kid Cudi, an incident, she said, he brought it up quite a bit. Another disturbing event, the eyebrow gash incident, was also discussed. Cassie claimed this happened because she hadn't answered the phone and had fallen asleep, possibly, she suggested, from a drink that had something in it. She also testified that Diddy was allegedly inebriated during this particular incident of alleged abuse. This volatile dynamic, it's claimed, was further complicated by what was described as a shared and deeply dangerous reliance on drugs. A pervasive culture of alleged drug use was described in court, opiates and ecstasy, or MDA, which Cassie identified as Diddy's drug of choice. She reportedly stated they were get-high partners, often taking drugs together during the freak-offs. The testimony included a harrowing account of Cassie waking up in a hospital with an IV in her arm after reportedly losing all sense of smell and taste. There were also claims that Diddy had instructed LA drug dealers not to supply her, and that she had learned at one point that Diddy himself had OD'd on what she described as a very strong opiate. Both, she testified, had separately sought treatment with ibogaine in Cancun in an attempt to combat their addictions. Amidst this unfolding personal chaos, dramatic courtroom battles over evidence and timing began to erupt, underscoring the immense pressure on all parties involved. The courtroom itself became a stage for procedural fireworks. The prosecution accused the defense of dumping a staggering 400 exhibits on them at the last minute, a move they argued was designed to disrupt their preparation. The defense countered, claiming they had worked all night until 3 o'clock in the morning to prepare and flag these exhibits. The judge's frustration was palpable. He reportedly reiterated his firm stance. The witness, Cassie Ventura, must be off the stand by the end of the week. He pushed for a streamlining of the process, explicitly limiting the defense's cross-examination time and making a pointed remark that judicial documents, meaning the exhibits, were not going to be placed on the public docket, a departure, some noted, from practices in other trials. As the defense relentlessly continued their efforts to chip away at Cassie's credibility, the narrative they constructed was one of her active, sometimes even provocative, engagement in the relationship. The defense presented texts where Cassie allegedly initiated games designed to rekindle romance, including one where she reportedly wrote about no breaking character to 8 o'clock a.m. Another message brought forward showed her writing, "I don't want to be a side piece, but I'll treat you as a king." Her own courtroom acknowledgement that Diddy's career was for sure ruined after her lawsuit was also highlighted. To balance the darker allegations, the defense also pointed to moments where Diddy was portrayed in a positive light, helping Cassie after a particularly rough public performance, and in messages calling her a queen. This incredibly complex web of alleged affection, profound abuse, and continued connection has led some commentators to openly speculate about the possibility of Stockholm Syndrome. This theory gained traction particularly around Cassie's statements that she still wanted to be with Diddy even after he allegedly threw her off a boat and violently squeezed her leg. But the prosecution was patiently waiting, gearing up for a redirect examination aimed at recasting these very text messages in a far more sinister and disturbing light. The air in the courtroom is thick with anticipation for the prosecution's redirect. Their strategy, legal experts suggest, will be to argue forcefully that the defense is skipping over a lot in the text message chains they've presented. They are expected to contend that Cassie's words, even those that appear willing or affectionate on the surface, were actually born out of profound coercion and a desperate desire to please a powerful and allegedly deeply abusive partner. Observers have noted a growing sentiment, based on the evidence presented so far, that Diddy looks like he's going down for coercion. The prosecution will likely emphasize that consent, even if given initially, can be withdrawn at any time, and that a consistent pattern of alleged violence and psychological manipulation effectively nullifies any claims of willing participation in the long run. The jury, after days of this intense back and forth, is now left with two starkly contrasting and deeply troubling portraits of a relationship. The defense has meticulously painted Cassie as a knowing, active, and often enthusiastic participant in a turbulent, sexually charged, and mutually consuming relationship, using her own past words as their primary ammunition. They suggest that if she was unhappy, she had agency and could have left. The prosecution, however, is poised to counter this narrative with a chilling depiction of alleged horrific abuse and calculated, insidious control designed to break her will and force compliance. As the courtroom continues to dissect a decade of intimate messages, disturbing allegations of addiction, and alleged soul-crushing abuse, the line between a complicated, toxic romance and outright criminal coercion becomes increasingly blurred and terrifyingly indistinct. With the chilling account from D. Woods describing Diddy's alleged broader pattern of demeaning and controlling behavior, adding yet another disturbing layer to the unfolding drama, the ultimate question looms large. Can the jury ever truly know if Cassie's past declarations of "I love you" were genuine expressions of affection or merely echoes from a gilded and very terrifying cage? The answer may lie in what they believe happened behind closed doors, a truth that now rests solely in their hands.